Traitor deserves worse than prison. The bailiff pressed Lieutenant Colonel Alexis Harper's face to the cold courtroom floor. Judge Wells watches, unmoved. The prosecutor's lips curl into a smile. Harper's military medals clink against the floor. Zip ties bite into her dark skin. The crowd erupts in whispers. "Terrorist lover!" a voice spits from the gallery. Security Officer Miller grinds his boot into her ankle. "Stay down where you belong." Harper's eyes remain defiant, calculating, waiting. The double doors crash open. Admiral James Sullivan strides in, 4 silver stars gleaming on his shoulders. Every head turns. Every breath stops. Why has an admiral just walked into this civilian courtroom? Lieutenant Commander Harper arrives at the courthouse in civilian clothes. Media vultures circle the entrance. Headlines scream, "Military sniper charged with leaking intelligence." Security scans her twice while white attendees pass through with barely a glance. "Arms up," the guard orders, running the wand over her body a second time. "Standard procedure." Harper's face remains neutral. She notices everything. The extra guards positioned near her. The whispers as she passes. The subtle shifting away from her path. Judge Franklin Wells studies her file with narrowed eyes. His record speaks volumes, harsh sentences for military personnel charged with insubordination. He exchanges a knowing glance with Prosecutor Sandra Blackwell. Old colleagues, same agenda. Harper's court-appointed attorney, Daniel Green, shuffles papers nervously. "They've stacked the deck," he whispers. "The prosecutor used to work with Wells on military cases." Harper maintains perfect posture. Eyes forward. SEAL training visible in every controlled movement. Security Officer Miller shadows Harper's every step, hand resting on his weapon. When she requests water, he pretends not to hear. When a white male defendant makes the same request minutes later, Miller promptly provides a cup. Prosecutor Blackwell approaches the bench. Her opening statement cuts through the room. "The defendant betrayed her country," Blackwell declares. "A decorated operator with unprecedented access who violated sacred trust." She carefully avoids direct references to race while using coded language that paints Harper as an outsider. Someone whose loyalty was always questionable. Harper scans the courtroom systematically. 3 men in the back row catch her attention. Dark suits, military posture, taking detailed notes about everyone present. They don't look like reporters or lawyers. One catches her looking. His eyes narrow. Harper returns her attention to the proceedings, face revealing nothing. Who are the mysterious men watching from the back of the courtroom? Prosecutor Blackwell strides to the evidence table. She produces a stack of papers with theatrical precision. "Exhibit A, Your Honor." She presents emails allegedly showing Harper contacted journalists about civilian casualties during a classified operation. Evidence of treason. Harper studies the documents. The timestamps look wrong. The email headers contain discrepancies. Her mission timeline doesn't match these dates at all. Lieutenant Commander Harper violated her oath and endangered her fellow SEALs, Blackwell declares. She produces a flash drive, holding it up like a smoking gun. "This contains additional evidence of communication with known foreign operatives." Harper's attorney rises halfway from his chair. "Your Honor, we haven't been provided with this evidence during discovery." Judge Wells dismisses the concern with a wave. "The prosecution has latitude given the national security implications." Harper leans forward. "Those aren't my emails. The timestamps don't match our mission schedule." Judge Wells slams his gavel. "You will speak only when addressed directly, defendant." Security Officer Miller moves closer to Harper, hand on his taser. "Need to restrain her, Your Honor?" Sweat beads on Green's forehead as he places a calming hand on Harper's arm. "My client has the right to consult with counsel." Prosecutor Blackwell approaches the bench, voice lowered but still audible. "Your Honor, we have reason to believe the defendant has concealed information about her activities overseas. Permission to treat as hostile?" Judge Wells nods without hesitation. Granted. Harper's training kicks in. She mentally maps the courtroom, notes all exits, counts security positions, studies the demeanor of each guard. Her gaze returns to the three men still observing from the back row. One speaks quietly into his sleeve. Harper catches Miller watching her assessment of the room. His hand tightens on his weapon. He smiles slightly. The judge's clerk looks uncomfortable, avoiding eye contact with everyone. The court reporter's fingers pause over her keyboard for a fraction of a second when Blackwell mentions classified evidence. Small details, inconsistencies. The picture forming in Harper's mind doesn't match the official narrative. What crucial information is Harper noticing that everyone else is missing? Prosecutor Blackwell displays photos of Harper with her SEAL team on the courtroom monitors. The images show Harper, the only woman standing alongside her male teammates in combat gear. The only woman in an elite unit. Blackwell's voice drips with insinuation. That must have created pressure to prove yourself. Harper's attorney rises. Objection, Your Honor. Relevance? I'm establishing motive, Blackwell counters smoothly. The need for attention and recognition when surrounded by men who likely didn't accept her. Judge Wells nods. I'll allow it. Continue. Harper's jaw tightens, the only visible reaction to the implied insult. Blackwell produces performance reviews with highlighted sections. She reads selectively. Difficulty following orders and tendency to question mission parameters. Is that why you leaked information, Lieutenant Commander? To undermine authority that didn't recognize your talents? Harper meets her gaze directly. Those comments were about suggesting tactical improvements that were later adopted as standard procedure. Blackwell smiles coldly. Yet you were passed over for promotion twice. Objection! Harper's attorney stands. My client's promotion record is not on trial. Overruled, Judge Wells responds without hesitation. Blackwell approaches Harper directly. Stand up, Lieutenant Commander. Harper rises, military bearing evident in her straight spine and squared shoulders. Show the court your hands, Blackwell demands. The courtroom falls silent. Harper extends her hands, calloused and strong. The hands of a sniper, Blackwell announces to the courtroom. Hands that have taken lives. Hands that typed messages to journalists exposing classified operations. Officer Miller steps closer, hand on his weapon. His eyes gleam with anticipation. Your Honor, Blackwell continues, voice carrying to every corner of the room. We request the defendant be restrained during these proceedings. Her combat training makes her a security risk. Before Green can object, Judge Wells nods. The court agrees. Officer Miller closes in, drawing his restraints with practiced efficiency. He grabs Harper's wrist roughly, twisting it behind her back with unnecessary force, his breath hot against her ear as he secures the first zip tie. Not so tough now, he whispers, tightening the plastic until it cuts into her skin. The courtroom watches in silence as she's forced back into her seat, physically restrained. Whispers ripple through the gallery. Someone in the back row snickers. Harper's face remains impassive, but her eyes catalog every face, every reaction. The judge's satisfied nod, the prosecutor's smug smile, the three men in the back row exchanging glances. Officer Miller stands unnecessarily close, invading her space. His body language communicates dominance, victory, the system working as intended. Harper notices a notification flash on Miller's phone screen as he adjusts his position, a message partially visible for just a moment before he tucks the device away. As Miller finishes restraining her, Harper notices something on his phone screen. What has she just discovered? During a recess, Harper sits alone in a holding room, wrists raw from the tight restraints. The fluorescent lights buzz overhead. No windows. One door. 2 cameras. She closes her eyes, controlling her breathing using SEAL training techniques. 4 counts in, hold, 6 counts out. Her heart rate slows. Mind sharpens. Memories surface. A night operation in Kandahar. Her spotter whispering coordinates. The weight of her rifle. A perfect shot that saved hostages. Her commander's nod of respect afterward. Another memory. Admiral Sullivan commending her after she prevented civilian casualties by questioning faulty intelligence. Sometimes doing right means standing alone, he had told her. True courage isn't following orders blindly. The door opens. Officer Miller enters, scrolling through his phone. The same phone where Harper spotted messages from an unknown contact. Words that burned into her memory in that split-second glimpse. Making sure she goes down today. And Judge is on board. Comfortable? Miller smirks, leaning against the wall. Get used to it. Traitors don't deserve comfort. Harper studies his movements. The keycard hanging from his belt. The radio frequency displayed on his shoulder unit. The way he favors his right side old injury, perhaps. May I use the restroom? She asks, voice neutral. Miller checks his watch. After court resumes, he says, leaving her alone again. The door clicks shut. Harper listens for his footsteps to fade. She shifts in her chair, working methodically against the restraints. SEAL training included escape techniques. The plastic begins to give, not enough to break free completely, but enough to create crucial mobility. She maneuvers herself to access a hidden compartment in her shoe heel. Inside, a military emergency beacon with text capability. Standard issue for deep cover operations, never registered in her official equipment log. Using the dexterity that made her an exceptional sniper, she activates the beacon and types a brief message with minimal movement. FALCON compromised. Courthouse. Evidence planted. She adds a specific code, her personal authentication signature, and sends. The device vibrates once, confirming transmission. Footsteps approach in the hallway. Harper quickly repositions herself, concealing her partially freed hand and the device. Her attorney enters, looking defeated. His tie loosened, hair disheveled from running stressed fingers through it repeatedly. They're building a strong case, he says, voice low. The judge is clearly biased, but challenging him would only make things worse. Harper maintains her composure. I need you to do something very specific when we return to court. He leans closer as she whispers instructions. His eyes widen. That's unusual, he says. Are you sure? Harper nods once. Trust me, it's important. His expression shifts from confusion to curiosity. All right, I'll follow your lead. What instructions has Harper given her attorney, and who received her emergency message? Court resumes with a hushed anticipation. Harper's restraints remain tight against her wrists as she sits straight-backed at the defense table. Miller positions himself directly behind her chair. Prosecutor Blackwell introduces a new witness, a man in a crisp suit with government credentials. The court calls Nathan Phillips, intelligence analyst with the Defense Intelligence Agency. Phillips takes the stand with the confidence of someone used to briefing generals. His testimony begins with his credentials, 15 years analyzing intelligence, specialized in signal communications and data security. The documents Lieutenant Commander Harper leaked contained operational details that could identify our methods and personnel, Phillips states. The damage to national security is severe and ongoing. Harper notices inconsistencies in his descriptions. He uses outdated terminology for current systems, mispronounces key acronyms. She leans toward her attorney and whispers rapid instructions. Green stands to cross-examine, clearing his throat nervously. Mr. Phillips, you've testified about signal intelligence protocols. Could you explain specifically how the ZX440 encryption system works with SATCOM delta channels? Phillips hesitates, just briefly enough for Harper to notice. I'm not at liberty to discuss classified systems in detail in this setting. Yet you just claimed my client leaked details about exactly these systems, Green counters, growing more confident. How can you assess the damage without technical knowledge? Phillips glances at Blackwell, who quickly rises. Objection, Your Honor. This line of questioning endangers national security protocols. Judge Wells nods immediately. Sustained. Move on, Counselor. Green persists, following Harper's guidance. One last question. When was the ZX-440 system first deployed in Middle Eastern operations? Approximately 3 years ago, Phillips responds confidently. Initial deployment was in the Hormuz security corridor. Green's eyebrows raise slightly. Thank you. No further questions. Harper's expression doesn't change, but satisfaction flickers in her eyes. The ZX-440 system doesn't exist. The testimony is completely fabricated. Officer Miller's radio crackles. He steps away to receive a message, his posture stiffening as he listens. He whispers urgently to another security officer by the door. Within moments, additional officers enter the courtroom, positioning themselves near the exits. Judge Wells notices the sudden security increase. His eyes narrow as he watches Miller's agitated movements. Why is courthouse security suddenly increasing, and what does Miller know that has him worried? Prosecutor Blackwell straightens her jacket, attempting to ignore the security shuffle. The prosecution calls Captain Thomas Reynolds. A man in a Navy dress uniform approaches the stand, his chest decorated with rows of ribbons and medals. He stands at perfect attention before taking his seat. Captain Reynolds, please state your relationship to the defendant, Blackwell begins. I served as Lieutenant Commander Harper's commanding officer during Operation Desert Shield and subsequent deployments, Reynolds responds, voice clipped and authoritative. Describe Lieutenant Commander Harper's behavior during these operations. Reynolds testifies with practiced precision. Initially exemplary. However, she became increasingly erratic during our last deployment. She questioned direct orders repeatedly and spent unusual amounts of time communicating off-channel. Harper's attorney objects. Your Honor, my client's personnel file shows she received a commendation for her actions during this operation. Judge Wells shifts in his seat, eyes darting to the increased security presence. The commendation doesn't preclude problematic behavior. Overruled. Reynolds continues, describing how Harper allegedly accessed classified files without authorization. She spent hours alone with intelligence data that exceeded her clearance level. Harper studies Reynolds carefully. His uniform fits impeccably, too perfect, like it's rarely worn. His posture mimics military bearing rather than embodying it. Most telling, he avoids eye contact with her completely. His ribbons include medals for operations she knows occurred after his supposed command ended. She whispers to her attorney, who stands. Captain Reynolds, could you state your service number for the record? Objection! Blackwell interrupts sharply. Irrelevant and potentially compromising operational security. Sustained, Judge Wells rules immediately. Outside the courtroom, voices raise in the hallway. Officer Miller's radio crackles again. His face pales as he listens to the message. He positions himself closer to the door, speaking urgently into his radio. Harper's attorney follows her instructions, addressing the judge. Your Honor, I request a brief recess to review new evidence that has just been made available to the defense. Judge Wells hesitates, glancing at the commotion developing outside his courtroom. The court will take 15 minutes. As people rise, Harper notices the 3 men from the back row have vanished. Reynolds quickly exits through a side door, avoiding the main hallway. Miller positions himself by the door, hand on his weapon, speaking urgently into his radio. What is causing the commotion outside, and why has the fake captain disappeared during the recess? Court reconvenes with a shifted atmosphere. New faces occupy the gallery. Several military personnel in formal dress uniforms sit with perfect posture in the back rows. Their presence draws curious glances from other spectators. Judge Wells enters looking flustered, his typical commanding presence diminished by frequent glances toward the uniformed observers. Prosecutor Blackwell appears unsettled but continues her performance. The prosecution presents digital evidence of the defendant's communications with journalists. She signals for the courtroom monitors to display a series of email screenshots. These messages clearly show the defendant's intent to undermine national security, Blackwell insists, highlighting timestamps and headers. Lieutenant Commander Harper sent operational details to reporter Thomas Wade on 3 separate occasions. Harper's attorney rises. Your Honor, I request permission to approach the evidence. Judge Wells hesitates, eyes flicking toward the military observers, then nods. Proceed. Green examines the displayed emails, following Harper's earlier instructions. Your Honor, I'd like to examine the metadata of these communications. Blackwell shifts her weight. The technical details aren't relevant to the content, which is clearly treasonous. The defense has the right to examine evidence authenticity. Green counters with newfound confidence. Judge Wells allows it, watching the military observers from the corner of his eye. Green points to specific irregularities in the headers and routing information. These messages show clear signs of digital manipulation. The SMTP headers contain impossible routing paths. Blackwell dismisses the concern with a wave. The defendant is trained in cyber operations. She could have altered the data herself to create plausible deniability. Green produces a document from his briefcase. I've subpoenaed Lieutenant Commander Harper's deployment records. She was in a classified location with no internet access when these messages were allegedly sent. Judge Wells studies the document, brow furrowed. This appears to be properly authorized, but it contradicts the prosecution's timeline. Blackwell's voice rises. Your Honor, this document could be falsified. I move to have the defendant taken into custody immediately as a flight risk while we authenticate these records. Judge Wells nods quickly. Motion granted. The defendant will be remanded to custody. Officer Miller approaches Harper with unusual aggression, drawing his handcuffs. On your feet! The military observers in the gallery exchange meaningful glances. Miller grabs Harper's arm. You're done, Lieutenant. As he pulls her to her feet, Harper notices movement at the courtroom doors, a flash of gold braid, a military insignia. As Miller reaches for his handcuffs, Harper notices a military insignia flash from someone approaching the courtroom doors. Who is about to enter? Officer Miller forces Harper to the floor with brutal efficiency. He plants his knee in her back, pressing her cheek against the cold tile. Judge Wells watches without intervention, expression detached as if observing a routine procedure. Hands behind your back, Miller growls, yanking her arms roughly. The zip ties bite deeper. Miller tightens them until Harper's fingers begin to tingle from restricted circulation. Traitors getting what they deserve, he mutters, loud enough for the front row to hear. The courtroom doors burst open with military precision. Admiral James Sullivan enters, 4 silver stars gleaming on his shoulders. 6 military police officers flank him, moving with disciplined purpose into the room. The gallery falls into stunned silence. What is the meaning of this interruption? Judge Wells demands, face flushing red. Admiral Sullivan approaches the bench with measured steps. His voice carries the weight of command. I am Admiral James Sullivan, Director of Naval Intelligence. This court is now witness to a matter of national security. Miller attempts to pull Harper to her feet, but 2 military police intercept him. Thomas Miller, you are being detained on suspicion of espionage and conspiracy against the United States. The courtroom erupts in confusion. Spectators rise from their seats. Reporters fumble for their phones. Judge Wells bangs his gavel repeatedly. Order! I demand order. Admiral Sullivan turns toward the bench. Judge Franklin Wells and Prosecutor Sandra Blackwell, you are both named in a federal investigation into obstruction of justice and conspiracy against the United States. Military police move toward the bench and prosecutor's table. Blackwell drops her papers, face draining of color. Harper remains composed as a female officer cuts her restraints. She rises to her feet, rubbing circulation back into her wrists. Admiral Sullivan addresses the stunned courtroom. Lieutenant Commander Alexis Harper is an active-duty intelligence officer conducting a sanctioned counterintelligence operation. Operation Falconer has been tracking a network of compromised officials selling classified information for the past 18 months. The three men who had been observing from the gallery reappear, now flanked by additional agents. One holds up FBI credentials. Judge Wells, Admiral Sullivan continues, your court was selected as the vehicle to discredit Lieutenant Commander Harper before she could complete her investigation. Wells sputters. This is outrageous! I'm a federal judge who has received substantial deposits to offshore accounts coinciding with key rulings in national security cases. One of the FBI agents interjects. Admiral Sullivan turns to Harper. Lieutenant Commander, please brief the court on your actual assignment. Harper steps forward, every inch the elite operator she is. Her voice carries authority that silences the room. For the past year, I've been part of a joint task force investigating information leaks that compromised 3 overseas operations and resulted in the deaths of American personnel. She gestures toward Miller and the now detained fake Captain Reynolds. These individuals are part of a network selling military intelligence to foreign interests. Judge Wells and Prosecutor Blackwell were manipulated into expediting this sham trial to discredit me before I could complete my report. Harper produces the small device from her shoe. This emergency beacon contains documented evidence of their communications and financial transactions. The transmission was received by Naval Intelligence 37 minutes ago. The FBI agents step forward. We've been monitoring all communications in and out of this courthouse, one explains. The evidence is substantial and conclusive. Judge Wells rises from his seat. I had no knowledge of any conspiracy. I was simply following proper judicial procedure based on evidence presented to my court. Blackwell frantically gathers her scattered files. This is outrageous. I was pursuing a legitimate case based on evidence provided through official channels. Harper approaches Blackwell calmly. The evidence was provided by Officer Miller through channels manipulated to appear official. Your eagerness to prosecute blinded you to obvious inconsistencies that any diligent prosecutor would have questioned. Admiral Sullivan addresses the stunned courtroom. Lieutenant Commander Harper is one of our most decorated special operators, with 3 distinguished service medals and a Silver Star. Her apparent leak was carefully crafted disinformation designed to flush out the actual conspirators. Miller struggles against his restraints. She's lying. She's the one who... Silence him, Admiral Sullivan orders, and a military police officer secures a hand over Miller's mouth. As federal agents secure the courtroom, an agent examines Miller's phone. His eyes widen at what he discovers. As federal agents secure the courthouse, what crucial evidence is about to be revealed on Miller's phone? The courthouse transforms into a secured federal crime scene within minutes. FBI agents in windbreakers collect evidence while military intelligence officers establish a command post in the jury deliberation room. Yellow tape cordons off hallways. Armed guards check credentials at every entry point. Lieutenant Commander Harper confers with Admiral Sullivan and 3 intelligence officials in a secured conference room. Screens display surveillance footage, financial records, and communication logs. The evidence creates a complex web of connections spanning multiple agencies and foreign contacts. The network extends beyond this courthouse, Harper explains, pointing to a digital map showing connections between Miller, the fake Captain Reynolds, and officials in 3 government agencies. They've been selling operational details that compromised missions and endangered personnel. Admiral Sullivan studies the network diagram. How did you identify Miller as the focal point? Pattern recognition, Harper responds, bringing up a timeline on the main screen. 3 mission compromises over 18 months. Miller had access to preliminary briefings for each one through his security clearance at the courthouse. He vetted visiting military personnel. She highlights financial records. Offshore deposits followed each information leak. The money trail led to shell companies registered to aliases used by known foreign agents. In a separate room, Judge Wells faces FBI investigators. The distinguished jurist now looks small beneath the harsh fluorescent lights. I had no direct knowledge of any conspiracy, Wells insists, voice strained. My rulings were based on the evidence presented. Standard judicial procedure. The lead investigator slides several documents across the table. These are records of unusual deposits to your Cayman Islands accounts. Each coincides with key rulings in cases involving classified information. Wells' face pales as he stares at the evidence. Those funds were from legitimate investments. Through a shell company connected to foreign intelligence services? The agent's tone makes it clear he doesn't expect an answer. Prosecutor Blackwell undergoes separate questioning 2 doors down. Her carefully constructed composure has crumbled. I was following orders from the Justice Department to prioritize this case, she claims, arms crossed defensively. Investigators produce emails showing Blackwell had been in contact with Miller prior to the case assignment. Messages discussing how to handle the Harper situation and references to making sure she goes down. These communications predated any official case assignment, the investigator notes. Care to explain? Blackwell's lips press into a thin line. I want to speak with my attorney. In the courthouse's main conference room, Admiral Sullivan addresses a closed session of military and justice officials. Screens display evidence from Harper's operation. This investigation has revealed systemic vulnerabilities in how we handle classified information and legal proceedings involving intelligence personnel, the Admiral explains. Lieutenant Commander Harper's operation was specifically designed to identify these weaknesses. Harper steps forward, presenting the full scope of her findings. 18 months of meticulous documentation reveals how Miller and his associates exploited biases and procedural loopholes to target military personnel who threatened their operation. They specifically targeted women and minorities in the special operations community, Harper explains, displaying personnel files of previous victims. People whose complaints about discrimination might be dismissed as excuses for poor performance. She brings up transcripts of Miller's communications with associates. They selected targets they believed would be less credible if they raised concerns. A Justice Department official raises her hand. How extensive is this network? Harper displays a comprehensive organization chart. 27 confirmed individuals across multiple agencies. 15 additional persons of interest still under investigation. Outside the courthouse, media vans line the street. Reporters broadcast live updates about major developments in what they're calling a courthouse coup. Social media explodes with partial information and speculation. The FBI director arrives, entering through a secure basement entrance. He joins the briefing in progress. All cases handled by Judge Wells and Prosecutor Blackwell over the past 5 years need immediate review, he announces after being briefed. We're establishing a special task force to identify patterns of judicial misconduct and prosecutorial overreach. Harper brings up a slide showing 3 previous military defendants whose careers were destroyed by similar tactics. These individuals were specifically targeted after they noticed irregularities in intelligence handling. All 3 were women or minorities in special operations roles, Admiral Sullivan adds. All 3 raised concerns about information security that were dismissed as excuses for performance issues. The FBI director nods grimly. We'll prioritize reviewing these cases. In the evidence room, technicians analyze Miller's phone. His communications reveal a sophisticated network using courthouse security positions to gain access to classified information. Texts to foreign contacts include mission details, personnel rotations, and equipment specifications sold to the highest bidder. He specifically targeted Lieutenant Commander Harper after she flagged unusual access patterns in mission briefings, a technician explains to the lead investigator. Her position as a female SEAL made her both dangerous to their operation and unlikely to be believed if she raised concerns. By evening, the operation expands to multiple locations. FBI teams execute simultaneous search warrants at the homes of 12 suspects. Military police secure offices at 3 different installations. Evidence collection teams catalog documents, devices, and financial records. The Director of National Intelligence arrives at the courthouse for a briefing. "How far up does this go?" he asks Admiral Sullivan. "We've identified connections to a Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense," Sullivan responds. "Evidence suggests higher-level involvement, but we're still developing concrete links." Harper updates her presentation with new information streaming in from ongoing raids. The conspiracy specifically exploited gaps between military justice, civilian courts, and intelligence oversight. "Gaps we need to close immediately," the DNI confirms. As night falls, the operation continues. Harper works alongside intelligence analysts, connecting new evidence to her 18 months of undercover work. The picture grows clearer with each passing hour. In a holding cell, Miller sits alone, refusing to cooperate with investigators. The fake Captain Reynolds has already begun talking, offering information in exchange for leniency. Judge Wells contacts prominent defense attorneys, all of whom decline to represent him after learning the nature of the charges. Prosecutor Blackwell's office is sealed as evidence. Her cases dating back 5 years are flagged for review. At midnight, Harper finally takes a break. Admiral Sullivan joins her in the courthouse cafeteria. "You took an enormous risk," he says quietly. "If your beacon hadn't transmitted—" "It wasn't the only failsafe," Harper replies. "I had 3 backup plans." Sullivan nods. "That's why you're the best. But 18 months undercover, knowing you were being targeted." Harper sips her coffee. "Someone had to stop them. They cost lives with their leaks. Good operators died because of compromised intelligence." "The Secretary of Defense wants to meet with you tomorrow," Sullivan informs her. "This goes higher than we initially thought." Harper's expression remains professional, but determination flashes in her eyes. "Then we keep going until we find every last one of them." As investigations widen, which high-ranking government official is about to be implicated in the conspiracy? 2 weeks later, Miller and his co-conspirators face a military tribunal in a high-security courtroom on the naval base. Armed guards stand at every entrance. No recording devices allowed. No public spectators. Harper sits in the front row, dress uniform immaculate, watching justice unfold. Miller slumps in his seat, prison jumpsuit replacing his former security uniform. The confident smirk vanished, replaced by hollow-eyed desperation. His attorney leans close, whispering urgently. "My client wishes to cooperate," the attorney announces. "He has information on bigger players in this conspiracy in exchange for consideration in sentencing." The lead prosecutor remains stone-faced. "The United States has already compiled an extensive case. Your client's cooperation, while welcome, isn't necessary for conviction." Miller's attorney persists. "My client was a minor participant following orders from higher authorities. He can name names that haven't yet surfaced in your investigation." Harper listens silently. Her testimony completed yesterday 5 hours of detailed evidence presentation that left no room for doubt about Miller's central role. "Officer Miller personally selected targets for discreditation or prosecution," she had explained, displaying his communication logs. "He manipulated evidence and exploited biases within the justice system to silence those who might expose his operation." The tribunal calls Miller to testify. Under the weight of overwhelming evidence, his carefully constructed facade crumbles completely. "I was recruited," he insists, voice breaking. "They said it was counterintelligence work, identifying potential security risks." He glances at Harper. "They said no one would believe a black woman over established authorities." The lead prosecutor's voice cuts like a blade. "You received over $2 million in offshore accounts. That's not payment for counterintelligence work." Miller crumbles further. They specifically targeted Harper because her exemplary record made her both dangerous to our operation and unlikely to be believed if she raised concerns. The tribunal members exchange glances. One leans forward. Who recruited you initially? Miller names a senior Defense Department official. The room falls silent. Across town, Judge Wells faces the Judicial Conduct Committee. His distinguished career ends not with retirement honors, but with disgrace. The committee's findings leave no room for ambiguity. Gross misconduct unbecoming a federal judge. Wells is forced to resign from the bench, his judicial legacy in ruins, his offshore accounts frozen, his reputation destroyed. In another hearing room, Blackwell faces the Bar Association Ethics Committee. Her law license suspended pending full investigation. Disbarment proceedings already underway. I was manipulated, she claims, but the evidence tells a different story. Years of pattern and practice, selective prosecution, willful blindness to exculpatory evidence. The fake Captain Reynolds, now identified as former intelligence analyst Robert Cooper, cooperates fully. Discharged for security violations 3 years earlier, he had been recruited to impersonate military personnel when needed. We successfully discredited 3 other whistleblowers, he admits. All were following proper channels to report security concerns. The tribunal orders all 3 cases reopened. 3 careers to be restored. 3 lives to be rebuilt. As the hearings conclude, news breaks across Washington. Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense William Harrington taken into custody based on evidence recovered from Miller's encrypted communications. 20-year career. Presidential appointments in 2 administrations. Now facing charges of espionage and treason. Harper watches the announcement on a monitor outside the tribunal room. No satisfaction shows on her face, only the grim determination of a mission still in progress. Admiral Sullivan approaches. Harrington's not the top. There's someone else. Harper nods. I know. The communication pattern suggests someone with even higher access. The investigation continues, Sullivan confirms. But first, you're due at the Pentagon. With the conspiracy unraveled, what unexpected recognition awaits Harper at the Pentagon? 1 month later, Lieutenant Commander Harper testifies before a congressional hearing on systemic vulnerabilities in military justice and intelligence operations. The packed chamber falls silent as she approaches the witness table. C-SPAN cameras broadcast her testimony nationally. She wears her full dress uniform, medals gleaming under the harsh lights. Her composure remains unshakable as committee members direct questions about the conspiracy and its implications. The intersection of classified information, military justice, and civilian courts creates dangerous blind spots, Harper explains, her clear voice carrying throughout the chamber. These gaps were deliberately exploited to target personnel who threatened to expose corruption. She indicates her prepared materials. I've outlined 12 specific vulnerabilities that enabled this conspiracy to operate undetected for years. The committee chair leans forward. Lieutenant Commander, in your assessment, were these vulnerabilities accidental or deliberately maintained? Both, Senator. Harper responds without hesitation. Some resulted from well-intentioned separation of powers. Others were deliberately preserved by those who benefited from the lack of oversight. Harper presents a comprehensive reform proposal on the chamber's displays. The document reflects weeks of work with legal, intelligence, and military experts. We need independent oversight of cases involving classified information, she recommends, highlighting key sections. And we must address how implicit bias makes some personnel more vulnerable to being discredited when they report concerns. A senator interrupts. Are you suggesting our military justice system is systemically biased? Harper meets his gaze directly. I'm stating that the data shows personnel from underrepresented groups face disproportionate scrutiny when raising security concerns. The evidence is in your briefing package, page 42. Admiral Sullivan testifies after Harper, supporting her findings. Lieutenant Commander Harper's experience highlights critical failures in our systems. Her recommendations deserve serious consideration if we want to prevent future compromises. The hearing concludes with bipartisan support for immediate reforms. Within days, the Defense Department announces the creation of a new oversight division focused on protecting intelligence personnel from malicious prosecution. Headlines track the rapid implementation. Military Justice Reform Bill clears committee. New authentication protocols for classified evidence. Mandatory bias training for military judges and prosecutors. Harper is appointed as special advisor to the implementation committee. She works 16-hour days alongside military justice experts and civil rights advocates, ensuring the reforms address both technical vulnerabilities and human factors. The three wrongfully discredited operators receive public apologies and reinstatement with back pay. Their cases become case studies in the new training protocols. A bipartisan coalition pushes legislation codifying the new protections. The Intelligence Personnel Integrity Act moves quickly through committee markups. At the Justice Department, a special review team examines hundreds of national security cases for similar patterns of abuse. 5 additional prosecutions are already being reopened. As Harper leaves a committee meeting, she receives a message from Admiral Sullivan. White House tomorrow, 0900, presidential recognition. As Harper leaves the congressional hearing, what unexpected opportunity is about to change her career trajectory? 6 months later, Commander Alexis Harper promotion ceremony held at the White House itself stands at the Naval Academy podium. The spring sunshine glints off the brass buttons of her uniform as she addresses the graduating class. 400 midshipmen hang on her every word. "Your training has prepared you for combat and crisis," she tells them, voice carrying across the parade ground. "But your character will be tested in ways no training can anticipate." The audience includes Admiral Sullivan, key members of Congress who championed the reforms, and several former justice officials who helped implement the new protective protocols. In the front row, the 3 exonerated operators sit as honored guests. "In my 15 years of service," Harper continues, "I've faced enemy fire, impossible mission parameters, and extreme physical conditions. But the greatest challenge came from within our own systems." She speaks without notes, drawing on lived experience that now shapes military policy. "In the field, your enemy is obvious, but sometimes the greatest threats to our nation and values hide behind authority and procedure, behind credentials and traditions that seem beyond question." Harper describes how attention to detail saved her operation, how documenting patterns others dismissed as coincidence eventually revealed the conspiracy, how integrity became her most powerful weapon. The Intelligence Personnel Integrity Act, signed into law last month, creates new protections, she acknowledges. But laws and systems are only as strong as the people who implement them. Your vigilance and moral courage matter more than any regulation. After the ceremony, Harper meets privately with a diverse group of female midshipmen considering special operations careers. They gather in a small classroom, eager for unfiltered advice. "Will it be different for us because of your experience?" one asks. "There will still be obstacles," Harper answers honestly. "Some from the mission, some from the system, some from individuals who feel threatened by your presence. Your excellence is both your armor and your weapon." A quiet cadet raises her hand. "How did you maintain your composure during the courthouse humiliation?" "I would have been terrified." Harper considers the question. "I never forgot who I was and what I stood for," she replies. "When you know your truth, temporary defeat is just part of a longer mission." The reforms Harper helped implement have already identified and prevented 2 similar attempts to manipulate military justice proceedings. The Congressional Oversight Committee has become a model for other branches of government. Her former attorney, Daniel Green, has been appointed to a special counsel position reviewing cases of potential judicial misconduct. As she leaves the Academy grounds, Harper pauses to watch the midshipmen drilling on the parade ground, the rhythmic precision of their movements against the backdrop of centuries-old buildings. Tradition meeting the future. Captain Lisa Rodriguez, another pioneering female officer, joins her. Hard to believe it was just last year you were facing prison, she comments. Now you're reshaping the entire system. Harper watches the formation execute a perfect turn. The system works when good people refuse to be silenced. Rodriguez smiles. They're already calling it the Harper Doctrine in the Pentagon. Trust but verify, especially when verification is discouraged. Harper turns away from the parade ground. Let's hope they remember why it was necessary. As they walk toward the waiting car, Rodriguez hands Harper a folder. The secretary has a new assignment for you. International liaison. Helping Allied forces implement similar reforms. Harper accepts the folder without opening it. There will be time for new missions tomorrow. Today belongs to those who stood firm when everything seemed lost. If you enjoyed this true story of justice and perseverance, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to Beat Stories for more powerful narratives that inspire. Hit that notification bell to never miss our weekly uploads of real-life drama and triumph. Remember, each like and share helps us bring more incredible stories to light. Join our community of justice lovers today.
Sometimes the most powerful revolutions don't come with noise, just one person standing their ground. At Beat Stories, we highlight those moments that shift the balance. If this story moved you, hit subscribe, because every week we bring real stories that shake the system.